Basically, it refers to, first and foremost, what exists between the skin and the bones. And it refers to the movement of the tissues, various tissue structures over the bone, not hinging our joints or contracting our muscles, which is basically how we normally move in everyday life and how basically mostly every activity is done and how humans normally move their body because that is the most efficient and natural way to move your body. You want to bend my arm, contract my bicep, move my joint. But the problem is that's the complete opposite mechanics that internal arts use. So obviously there we can already jump into a lot of confusion and something that trips a lot of people up. Because usually internal is referring to a process of release that generates a change, a movement inside through the various tissue layers over the bone, not a muscular contraction, not a joint bending, not big, huge flowy movements. It's more so referring to the amount the tissues are moving over the bone, and basically where the bone is more or less kind of stationary and then the tissues are moving over it. And it's more to do with developing a wide array of internal qualities that can be passed into the body via the medium of chi, or kind of the interface of the mind in the body, or the awareness in the body, however you want to say it. And then the refinement of that process of interaction between the mind and the body, and how the awareness is able to soak into the various tissue layers in the body like water into a sponge, or kind of like ink onto a paper. I guess like calligraphy ink, when you put on the paper, it kind of like soaks in. So it's kind of, that's more or less a lot of the engine, at least in the early stages of something like Tai Chi and many other internal arts, is based on getting the awareness to be able to soak into and stabilize and then pass various qualities into the various tissue layers in our body, of which I'll maybe break down in a different video, because the different tissue layers have different elemental qualities and associations, and then how those tissue layers are modulated and worked with can then have a knock-on effect with something like the liver or the spleen or the kidneys, or whatever layer we might be working with. And that can get into kind of more some of the health side of it. But it's important to understand that it's not something we can just do because we feel like it. It's not like we just pop into a casual Tai Chi class and we're actually doing anything remotely resembling in any way, shape, or form, and any, not even in the same ballpark of what Tai Chi actually is. It's not something we can just do because we feel like it or decide we want to do it, or because it makes us feel cool, different, or special. It's something that has to be developed according to specific principles and mechanics so that the bones and the tissues interact with each other in the right way, and that our awareness interacts with these things in the right way and relates and interacts in the correct manner, because we're trying to build the proper engine and lay the proper foundations. Otherwise, basically, we are just doing whatever it is we were doing before. So our desk job, runner, doing push-ups occasionally, body does Tai Chi. That's what we're doing. We're not actually doing Tai Chi or anything internal, because we haven't developed that engine, we haven't built that body, we haven't set up those causes and conditions. We're just doing the desk worker that runs and maybe wants to relax a little bit by, moving their joints around and maybe, breathing deeply or whatever, which again, is nothing wrong with that. It's not knocking it. It's just getting more precise and specific, having clarity and discernment about what words are and what they mean and what their correct usage and application is within a specific context. Because if we want to be good at something, we want to be successful, we want to have skill in something, we need to have those qualities. We need to have clarity, we need to have discernment, we need to have an understanding of what words actually mean within the context that we're going for, not what we think, hope, believe, desire, or visualize that it should mean, but what the people that develop the system and develop the technology, what they actually mean by it. Because otherwise you're just going to produce whatever result that is probably has nothing to do with what the actual system is and what it actually hopes to produce, which then also kind of just contradicts the whole thing, is why even do it in the first place. So way better uses of time, way better uses of energy than, putting in the ridiculous amount of time, energy that it would take to build the proper engine. Because it's actually not a natural process, and it's not a natural way of moving. Quite the opposite. It's quite an unnatural way of moving, quite an inefficient way of moving, quite an unnatural process overall. And I say that because people will be like, oh, Tai Chi and these things are so natural. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, they're based in the I Ching, which I guess you could say is natural principles, but that's about it. It's really not a natural way of moving. It's not a natural process. It's quite the opposite. And it's also not really comfortable. It's not easy. It's not soft. It's not flowy. It's oftentimes actually not relaxing or sedating. It can be quite the opposite. It can be quite stimulating, actually. And what we consider as relaxation can usually be quite painful. Because just on a simple example, like if all the tissue layers in your body are kind of stuck together and they're stuck to the bone, then that's when that starts to unwind under pressure, under force, that's not going to feel that comfortable. If you kind of think like the most intense deep tissue massage you ever had, and when it goes to the point to where you want to scream or you actually legitimately do scream, that's kind of should be the sensation throughout your entire body the entire time you're doing something like an internal art. Obviously not quite that extreme, but taken down a few notches, and that's kind of the level of quote unquote subtlety that we're talking about here. But that again, that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of discipline and dedication to even get to that point. But it is something that is obviously externally verifiable, completely palpable, completely tangible, completely solid, and deeply transformative for the entire body. That is obvious. And I say that because people are like, oh, it's internal, you can't see it. Oh, it's internal, it's soft, it's subtle. Or, oh, I'm visualizing chi. It's like, well, would you rather visualize having $1 million or would you rather have $1 million? Who's going to develop more skill? The person that visualizes and dreams about going to the gym 3 times a week, or the person that literally goes to the gym and works out 3 times a week? Who's going to have a better outcome for their health? The person who thinks about and watches videos about eating healthy, or the person who actually eats healthy? So the point is that thinking about something and wishing something were so is not the same thing as actually it being so, or attempting to put in place the causes and mechanics that will more or less make it more likely for that thing to actually occur. So what I said earlier about chi is talking about the interface between the mind and the body. So if there's no chi, if we don't have any, we don't really building it up, then we really aren't going to get much tissue interaction at all. We're going to put our mind in our body and we're going to feel not that much. Maybe we feel where our arms are. We're going to feel our hinge joints, and we're going to more or less be functioning at whatever natural, normal level we were before. And then if we have no chi, we can't even interact. The fluid can't even soak into the sponge. The ink can't even soak into the paper. There's going to be no movement of tissue over the bone. There's going to be no mobilization and activation or articulation of the tissues, which again, you can put your hand on someone, you can feel it. And if you have the eye to see it because you have the skill, you can look at a skilled practitioner and more or less see what they're doing and see what's going on. Obviously, there's exceptions, especially at higher levels, but with no chi, no tissue interaction, no chi, no movement or mobilization of tissue over the bone, no chi, no mobilization of the fluids inside the body. Because the other thing is when this stuff actually starts moving, you get really hot, really sweaty, and is a massive workout. And again, that is verifiable. So it's like, who's going to have more success and have much more improvement to the health? The person that visualizes energy and stars from the cosmos and pulls it in, or the person who's literally moving the substances that make their body function? I think probably the person who's literally moving their blood, moving their interstitial, their lymphatic, their craniosacral, all the other fluids in their body are moving and circulating at a much higher degree, which is what we typically associate with vitality and health. So to me, that sounds a lot more useful and beneficial. And all legitimate systems have external markers, tests, and measures of progress. It's not vague. It's not wishy-washy. It's not wishful thinking. It's not subjective. It's not relativistic. It's not personal, and it's not based in imagination or anything like that. It's like many other endeavors of life. There are units of measure. There are external markers. There are tests. There are legitimate measures of progress, which is why it's called a system, because that's by definition what a system is. If you remove those things, that's no longer a system. It's just who knows what, creative thinking, wishful thinking, superstition, I guess is the best way to do it. Superstition is, I guess, the best way to describe it. Because it's like if you can do X, then it means Y. If you can't do X, then you don't possess Y skill. If I can do this, then that would usually imply within that system that I'm at X and Y level. If you can't do it, then it would imply you're not at that level. Pretty simple, pretty cut and dry, because simply it is a skill like any that is earned through hard work, dedication, discipline, and a lot of good fortune, a lot of good luck, maybe who knows, maybe some talent, maybe something, who knows. And then, of course, most importantly, adhering as best we can, because we're all human and we tend to screw things up, adhering as best we can to the correct principles and mechanics, and being willing to admit our errors, correct our errors, and try to get to a higher level of efficiency and effectiveness within whatever system or art that we're doing. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that adds some clarity to the subject that is too often muddled and shrouded in, oh, it's spiritual, oh, it's internal, oh, it's foreign. It's like, well, no, we can't have clarity, we can't have discernment, we can't understand what words mean, and we can't understand that if it is a system, then by definition it would include the things that a system has. So then if it includes those things, then we should try to do those things and adhere to those things as best we can. Otherwise, what's the point? And I don't know.